This is our London, and there's a new power growing. It's all of us, together. We're building a resistance, one recruit at a time.
Watch Dogs Legion, Ubisoft's third game in its hacktivist open world series, asks a lot of questions. Just how far are we willing to let authoritarianism and corporate greed dictate the course of society? What are the consequences of underfunded public services? What happens when ordinary people make a stand? Its most fascinating question, though, is what if every non-playable character was playable? I recently visited Ubisoft Toronto for a 45-minute hands-off demo of Watch Dogs Legion. At first glance, it is what you'd expect from a third game in the series. There's an open world, this time it's near future London, and you can drive cars, hack CCTV cameras, and play havoc with people's smartphones. But there's much more to Watch Dogs Legion. Underpinning the entire game is an interconnected network of systems that allow for an astonishing set of possibilities. These systems fit together to create what Ubisoft calls the Play as Anyone feature, which effectively acts as a hyper-advanced version of Driver San Francisco's Be Any Car shift mechanic. Basically, there is no cast of traditional heroes in Watch Dogs Legion. Instead, literally any person you encounter on the street in Legion's world can be your playable character. You could be a prim and proper banker ready to cause chaos dressed in a custom-cut suit. Or perhaps a renegade punk with swagger in every step is more your style. Or, to take the idea to its extreme conclusion, you could be an 80-year-old pensioner who can barely climb a waist-high wall. Every single person in this digital metropolis is procedurally generated. Each one has a backstory, relationships, and traits. Most importantly though, none of this is purely for show. It is via study of these generated personalities that you'll select which of London's citizens you wish to recruit into your DedSec hacking gang. Yes, as the game's title suggests, you don't just choose one person to play as, rather, you choose many. The next question then is, why does London require a team of hackers? Well, in the wake of Brexit, the city is facing its downfall. Rising automation has devastated the economy. The government has become an ineffective husk. Authoritarianism has swollen to the point that private military contractors run the city like an Orwellian nightmare. It's a real-life far-right endgame that many people currently fear, but amplified with a sci-fi overlay. Between the peaks of the Shard and the Gherkin fly surveillance and combat drones that enforce the will of London's new overlords. By recruiting numerous people to your cause, you can create a team with the variety of skills and approaches required to bring the terrifying dystopian regime that rules over this version of London to its knees.
Ready for some action, Naomi?
Always. But this recruit better be worth all the trouble.
Recruitment starts with something veteran Watchdog players will be familiar with, profiling characters by using your phone. Every character in the world has a routine, and by hacking their mobile device you can learn where they'll be and what they'll be doing at various times throughout the day. This knowledge allows you to intervene in their lives and help solve their problems. Every character has a meter that measures their support for DedSec. Some are just a final straw away from being ready to put on a mask and get involved with the resistance, while others require a little more persuasion. To help you raise a character's support meter, the game dynamically creates missions based on their personality and backstory. For example, you may help release them from the clutches of blackmail or delete files the authorities hold on them. Recruiting causes a ripple in the fabric of London. Everyone is linked to someone else via a web of social activity. Friends, relatives, partners, and even enemies. These people can be affected by your actions, and so convincing someone to join DedSec may also cause their friends and family to increase their support for the resistance. Similarly, if your recruitment process involves casualties, those linked to your victims will think less of you, push them to their limits, and they may even kidnap your team members off the streets or join DedSec's enemies to get their revenge. With new members recruited, you're able to assign them one of three classes: Enforcer, Infiltrator, or Hacker. Each comes with a skill tree to progress and a unique role to fulfill. Enforcers are your foot soldiers, who learn flashy gunplay techniques and make use of the game's heaviest artillery. Hackers fulfill the traditional Watch Dogs fantasy and are able to use RC vehicles to infiltrate buildings from afar and even control the drones that dominate London's skyline. The Infiltrator class is all about stealth and melee, and are the embodiment of completely refreshed systems in both departments. Melee combat now has blocks, dodges, and counters, making it a more fully featured option. It is also tied to a new escalation system. If you fire a gun, every enemy in the area will seek you out and respond with lethal force. Pick a melee fight though, and it's not only easier to avoid attention, but enemies also won't pull a gun out on you. This allows you to more easily return to stealth after an encounter. Infiltrators can also turn invisible. Well, kind of. In this nightmare future London, it's now mandatory for every citizen to have their eyeballs wired up to augmented reality software. Infiltrators can hack this software and delete their image, rendering them invisible to everyone around them. The game's commitment to Choice means that you can create a team that favours one of these classes, or assemble a multi-talented team that allows you to choose your approach for any given mission. Like in Grand Theft Auto 5, you can swap on the fly to any of your recruited characters, which means should you require to crank up the violence mid-mission, you can simply switch perspective to one of your enforcers. When out on missions, you'll want to make sure the violence doesn't get too hot, because Watch Dogs Legion features permadeath. If any of your team are killed, they're never coming back, and so every mission features a very real tension that it could be the last for your star player. There's something distinctly XCOM about this, and it's a minor stroke of genius to bring that strategy game stress across to an open world action game. Thanks to underpinning systems like this and the constantly altering relationships of London's population, Watch Dogs Legion appears to be a game dedicated to cause and effect. Like Shadow of Mordor and its Nemesis system, DedSec's world is powered by ever-moving components that ensure consequences are explored in a way that isn't simply narrative moral choices. With all of this said, it's easy to worry that Watch Dogs Legion is an entirely systems-driven game, lacking the cinematic flair and bright personality of its predecessor. After all, if the game designers themselves have no idea who your characters will be, how can they create a compelling story? I was only able to see a single campaign mission and its associated cutscenes during my hands-off demo at Ubisoft Toronto, but what played out before me seemed like any other cinematic. It was not obvious that the character involved wasn't a pre-designed protagonist. This is the result of a daunting amount of work. There are multiple versions of the story that play out depending on your DedSec roster. As with previous games, there is still a core narrative with multiple storylines and dozens of scripted missions, but the cutscenes for these change depending on who you have recruited. Ubisoft emphasises that it's not merely a case of different actors reading the same script, but that cinematics have been written numerous times over in order to cater to the variety of playable character archetypes. Some characters are sarcastic, others are professional, and the script variants will address this. It is a crazy ambition, but an ambition that could mean that Watch Dogs Legion's characters feel a bit soulless. I fell in love with Watch Dogs 2's eccentric cast, and it's hard to shake the feeling that Legion can't possibly do the same when the characters have, to some degree, been produced by a piece of software. And yet everything I've seen so far about Watch Dogs Legion has been so outlandishly ambitious and apparently successful that I'm also willing to give the team the benefit of the doubt. I won't jump the gun just yet and say Watch Dogs Legion is guaranteed to be Game of the Year material. Systems of this scale, scope and complexity simply have to be proven over hours of play, not a 45-minute demonstration. What I can safely say though, is that this is the Watch Dogs sequel no one saw coming, and a sequel that no one is going to forget.